Welcome to our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. My name's Lisa Levinson, and I am one of your hosts this evening. I work for In Defense of Animals, and we're so proud to present this program on vegan spirituality to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. We host this program interviewing spiritual leaders from all around the world every month or so. And we also have in-person groups, and you're welcome to join those. You can go to veganspirituality.com and click join a group, and you'll find a local group where you can meet for potlucks and interesting discussions and community rituals, all sorts of fun events. You can also find us on our Facebook page, which is called Vegan Spirituality. This month, we've got a special guest for you, and I'm going to invite my co-host, Judy Carmen, who wrote Peace to All Beings. She's going to introduce our special speaker with you today. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. That's Lisa and Reverend Michael Berensweg, and I get to introduce him, and we're so thrilled to have you with us, Michael. Michael has been vegan for over 25 years, but prior to that, he and Marilyn, his wife, were mostly vegan in 1971, almost 50 years ago. So that's got to be a record for a lot of us. As more information came out, they gave up leather 35 years ago and became strict vegans 25 years ago. And so this was before tofu and soy milk and all these things. So it's a real honor to be with someone that saw the light so long ago. Michael was ordained as a vegan deacon of compassion in 2018. And in addition to co-hosting and co-producing his own vegan radio show on WBAI-FM Pacifica, he has been a featured speaker on many other radio programs where he has promoted vegan living. He interviewed Ren Berry, the late Ren Berry. We're sad to have lost him. He did a lot of great books, and one of them was Food for the Gods, Vegetarianism and the World's Religions. Reverend Berensweg also has a sanctuary for injured and orphaned birds, including starlings, sparrows, chickens, pigeons, and cats. And I guess hopefully they all get along. He's also introduced a segment on Coast to Coast AM with No More, the Yale physicist of EarthSafe International, where they discuss the role of animal agriculture in climate change, and he debated Robert Kennedy on the same subject. He also continues to share the vegan message in many other venues as well. But one of his primary areas of interest, and one thing I know we're all anxious to hear about, is his compelling message about Jesus being vegan. He has researched the subject deeply and believes that Jesus not only practiced veganism, but required it of his followers. He has plans to start his own church based on holistic, organic, communal, grassroots, ethical, compassionate veganism. What a wonderful church that will be. So, Reverend Berensweg, welcome. And let me start out by asking you about your early days. You're among the earliest vegans, I think, in North America, probably. What was it that inspired the two of you to adopt a way of living long before tofu and non-dairy milks and other items were available?
Well, actually, tofu was available when we got started. We came to veganism through Zen macrobiotics. And that's a Japanese form of eating. Their top 5 highest diets are completely vegan. So we would shop around in Philadelphia for tofu. They did have tofu at that time, but you really had to travel around to get the foods that you needed. But it was worthwhile. What got us started, I guess, was our mutual empathy for animals and for life. I gravitated as a young person towards Buddhism. And that leads you to Buddhism is veganism as well. By the way, your introduction, there's nothing more to say. I'm semi-joking. You did a great introduction. And your book, Peace for All Beings, is really wonderful. Let me just say that too. Yeah, so, I would say Buddhism led the path to veganism, Taoism, but as well, one cannot be in our culture not influenced by the concept of Jesus and the personhood, you know. And there was always a feeling that, of course, this person had to be right there, you know, with the others. And you mentioned Rin Berry, his great book, Food for the Gods. That got me started 21 years ago. On the very same station, we eventually did vegan programming. And that's Nancy Kogel from Roar, Reaching Out for Animal Rights. I heard Rin Berry in 1998 being interviewed, and he said that Jesus was vegan, and he made some very, very convincing statements. So I got his book. Food for the Gods is a great, great book. Covers all the religions, Taoism, Buddhism, Islam, Jain, all the denominations of Christianity, Judaism, and all of them began as vegan requiring practices. So it's really, really fascinating. And as time went along, I said to myself, well, the most popular person in the world, the most respected person in the world, right? Son of God, God incarnate, taught, required, commanded veganism. What's up? You know, let's get this out there and change this world from what it is to what it gloriously could be. So that, you know, and the more reading I did, I read Food for the Gods and read the different books that were contained within the bibliography. The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ by Charles T. Slavic. Rin Berry told me we used to speak regularly that that's what inspired him to write Food for the Gods. Reading The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ, you could call it kind of an eponymous book. He followed Charles Slavic on his lecture circuit. And it literally says in that book, church fathers wrote that Jesus commanded me to be vegetarian. So that really is profound. What more can be said? There we go. You know, I have visions of a movie with Jesus, the greatest story never told. Jesus Christ, vegan Jesus, vegan Jesus. Would be great to make a movie like that, which you could see on every marquee around, you know, the country, around the world. To have an overnight conversion to a true vegan Christianity. So I don't know if that's exactly responding to what you asked, Judy.
Well, you kind of moved into some of the later questions because that's the main thing we want to learn from you tonight, of course, is about Jesus being vegan. But real quick, before we do that, how about telling us a little more about when I think you got started rescuing animals at the homeless encampment, is that right? And
No,
now you're
no,
still,
no, no.
okay.
It's almost like when we came together, Marilyn and myself, 50 years ago. We're walking along the street and little kids would give us cats, little kittens. So we started taking in kittens, wonderful beings. We loved them to death, to life. And that went on. But in 1995, I found a baby bird, a starling. And that's a story in itself. I was walking up the street to our apartment in Bourne Hill, Brooklyn, and I see a bird on the sidewalk. And you know, the way usually 100% of the times birds will fly away when anybody approaches, you know. But this bird wasn't flying away; it was staying in the area and not flying away from me. And I noticed that the bird was agitated. So I said to her, I found out it was a she. Um, what's the matter? And she pointed into the, believe it or not, she pointed into the doorway, the pathway, and underneath the garbage can lid, I see the mouth of a baby bird. So it didn't take long to realize that the baby bird had been knocked out of the vine and was under the garbage can, begging its mother to feed her. So we gathered her up. And Maryland's at that point, this is 1995, so we were at food for 25 years. We knew about food, about putting organic foods together. We made a mash for her, and she ate. Things went well the first night. But the morning came, and when I went to feed the baby bird, she wouldn't eat. This is very distressful. So the baby bird is calling, calling, and her mother, who was a bird from the previous day, came to the window. We're on the first floor in the bushes. and they're calling back and forth to each other because the baby bird is hungry. And I'm saying, this is pitiful. What do? I can't put her out on the sidewalk. She can't even stand up. What do I do? And I said, I got to give it another try, feeding the baby, which I did. And this time it went like a charm. The baby bird ate, and the mother is watching me, and the baby bird is stopping her, begging for food and calling. And the mother looks at me and says, "You did it. She's yours." And she flew away and never came back. And she lived with us for 12 and a half years. We gave her the option, took her outside, bathed her, said, take off. And she just went back and forth to each one of our heads and didn't want to go. So she lived with us for 12 and a half years. But then, for some fateful reason, the floodgates just started opening up. We started finding another starling 11 months later, sparrows, pigeons, and at a point we had 12 birds. So that's how it got started. That's how we wound up caring for animals at the homeless tent camp. Because when we came to the homeless tent camp, we came with a number of birds. So we gained the reputation of being caregivers and not wanting to go along with meat-eating, carnist, allopathic medicine. We delved into and studied homeopathy and herbs and organic diet and did very, very well. Our second starling lived to 13 and a half, and they're supposed to live 5 or 6 years. Glorious experiences. It was amazing how the mother knew to communicate with me, to tell me about her baby, and then to come back and to egg me on to feed her child and realize that she's with you. She's in good hands. And she was glorious. Her name, we thought she was a boy. We called her Merton, and I called her Murdy, but she turned out to be a girl. And she was so devoted and friendly and personable. Yeah, so that's how we came to care for animals.
Thank you for sharing that, Michael. That is a truly vegan lifestyle. You just brought it all together, and what a beautiful story about the birds.
Oh yeah, excuse me for saying so, but I find animals in a great many cases to be much more intelligent and sensitive than people are. We had a living here a few years ago, 3 years ago. We're sitting here at Spring, and I see a hummingbird graze the window in the room I'm sitting in right now. Graze the window, touch the window, but not hard. And it might have been a day or two or three. And it took 2 or 3 days to realize that hummingbird was saying, put a feeder out. It was looking right in saying, put a feeder out, which is what we did. And the hummingbird was there all summer and came back the next 2 years too. So, I mean, talk about psychic intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, they have so much to teach us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Look at the yogis, all the different positions are animal positions that enhance the life of a human.
Right. Well, thanks. So getting back to this other amazing subject of Jesus being vegan, I've read that book too, The Vegetarianism of Jesus, and I highly recommend it. But before I go on, I wanted to mention to everybody there's a video about you and Marilyn and the birds, and how can they find it? It was really good. So,
by the way, if I could say, it's an honor to be on your program, which was graced by Pastor Rob Monroe of the Humanitarian Church and Reverend Carol Saunders and Father Donatello Iocco. Great program that you have.
well, thank you. Yeah, we're loving it and trying to help all of us think all this through and figure out more ways that we can educate people about how important it is to be vegan and how much good it can do for the animals, the earth, and us.
It's paramount.
Yeah.
It's number one, far and away.
Yes. So one of your main teachings is that Jesus was vegan and taught nonviolence. As we know, those teachings have been lost.
Well, not
What
exactly,
happened?
not exactly lost. They were purposely buried
Yeah, so
by
tell
the
us about that.
well by the Romans who took over Christianity and turned it on its head. For example, The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ by Charles Slavic. The subtitles are The Communalism, Pacifism, and Vegetarianism of Primitive Christianity. Historical evidence that Jesus and the disciples not only were vegetarian, but taught the practice to their followers. And the book expounds on that greatly. But what's also more than intriguing is that you can use the Bible as it exists, to extract this same conclusion. The matter of fact, that just every day is a learning day and a way to hone your abilities to communicate. Just this previous day, I was on a Christian vegan site and we were having a discussion about this. And this gentleman who's vegan, but a Christian Bible zealot, was saying to me, where in the Bible does it prohibit eating meat? The picture seems to have frozen.
Michael, we can still hear you, so you can
Oh,
continue.
okay. So this person said to me, where does it say in the Bible that you can't eat meat? And I don't want to be condescending. You know, I feel like writing back that's silly, because where does it say in the Bible that you can't bust a person's window down and steal all their accoutrements? You know, it doesn't say that in the Bible, right? Equivalent to that is, as a matter of fact, it does say you can eat meat. Now, I hope that's not shocking everybody and saying, what is he talking about? After all, us talking about veganism. But it's a question of nomenclature, okay? Vernacular colloquialism, the fashion of the day, connected with language. And if you look at the etymology of the word meat from Skeat's Etymological Dictionary of 1611, when the King James Version was fashioned and issued, it says meat is any food which is solid and is not liquid. Okay, meat is any food that is solid and not liquid. So reading the King James Version of the Bible, it says, I have given you every seed-bearing plant, every fruit-bearing seed. In other words, all vegetables. This for you shall be meat. So yes, we can eat meat, but God commands us to eat vegetables as meat. That is our food. So there's a commandment right off the bat. And Jesus accentuates it. Jesus says God commanded us to eat vegetable meat, and that's what we eat. Language is very interesting. You can manipulate people, you can distort things, you can pervert things, but there you go. The original commandment was to be purely vegetarian and vegan, and that's the Garden of Eden.
Right. So what do you say? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You must have gotten all kinds of responses from Christians, and we need help in talking to Christians too. I've talked to some and I've said, you know, Jesus was probably vegan, and they just go, yeah, he probably was. But it's like it doesn't impact them personally.
I don't know what to say about that, because he wasn't probably vegan, he was vegan, okay? Not to be too pushy, but he was vegan. But that's distraughtly marveling, because how they could say, yeah, he probably was, but it doesn't impact them. I mean, I can't fathom that. This is Son of God, God incarnate, who was vegan. And Jesus says, be perfect as thy Father is in heaven. Psalms 145:9 says, and his tender mercy shall be over all his works. You know, so we're supposed to emulate, go forth and be like me. So for them to say he probably wasn't, it doesn't faze them, I don't think it's that hopeless. They can't be serious. If they say that he probably was, and he more than probably was, I don't know what to say. If that doesn't faze them, to stop them in their tracks and say, God incarnate was vegan, taught it, required it, commanded it, this is what we must do.
Do you think that some of the people that came after Jesus, like Paul and some of the others who wanted to expand Christianity thought maybe it's too hard to demand that they be vegan, and so they kind of loosened up the rules?
Well, it's difficult to say about Paul because there are so many angles on Paul. There's a terrific, I was planning on reading from some of these books, but I guess I won't do that, read directly from the books. But in The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ, Charles P. Slavic, page 44 does a terrific job on some of the things that Paul says. And interestingly enough, yesterday on Facebook, they were citing Romans 14. And Paul, dare I say, is maybe schizoid, bipolar, excuse me, sorry. But he starts out by saying that those weak in faith only eat vegetables. So, of course, the meat eaters point to that. But they forget there's a whole chapter there with 20 plus verses. And by the time he gets to verse 21, he says, it is good neither to eat meat nor to drink wine. And the word good and God are synonymous. That's why they call it the good book. So he's saying it is God not to eat meat nor to drink wine. So this is how he concludes. So Paul is caught in midair. Keith Akers' book, The Lost Religion of Jesus, that's another great book. The Forgotten Beginnings of Creation and Christianity, outstanding, which Keith Akers was involved with as well. In his book, A Vegetarian Source Book, quotes Paul as saying, I am vegetarian, I want to be pure, so when I meet Jesus, I will be pure. So Paul is a mixed bag. You know, it's difficult to say about Paul. At times he talks against vegetarianism, and at times he talks very much for it. But then again, one has to take into account that books have been distorted and rewritten. And the Bible itself says to separate the wheat from the chaff. Realize the beautiful verses and realize the verses that don't conform and are in accordance with compassion and kindness are helpful to life. You know, it's upon us to form and are in accordance with compassion and kindness and are helpful to life. It's upon us to make these decisions and to be discerning. So yeah, a lot of the writing in the Bible is quite confusing. And if I could recommend, there's a spiritual awakening radio, James Bean. He's got some good material that one can not only read, but listen to. Spiritual Awakening Radio, James Bean, on the original Christians being purely vegetarian, vegan. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that Hieronymus, who became Saint Jerome, makes a very, very pitiful statement saying that the stinking juices of meat were shoved down our throat. Jesus of Christ has joined the beginning with the end, and we no longer eat this food. And that truly is what is the format of the Bible that very, very few people point out, because the very first page of the Bible does command veganism. Genesis 1:29. That's the first chapter. The second chapter literally says another account of creation, which is a little confusing, but you know, we got to go with what's there, right? But this time they call it the tree of life. And Keith Akers points out that one of the great prophets who Jesus stood by, who were vegan and who spoke out against animal sacrifices, Amos spoke in terms of opposition. You know, what was peaceful, what was violent, what was evil, detrimental, okay, what was good. And the revelation of St. John the Divine, which closes out the Bible, literally says in chapter 22 that the nation shall be healed eating from the tree of life. So going right back to the beginning, right back to the vegan commandment that from the outset of the Bible.
Thanks. Yeah, I will look that up. I had not heard that before about Revelation 22.
Yeah, the revelation of St. John the Divine. It's also called the revelation of Jesus Christ. The last chapter literally says to join the end with the beginning, healing all the nations, going back to the Garden of Eden vegan diet.
Okay, so at this point, I'm thinking we probably have some questions, and we could maybe open up for questions. Lisa, can we do that now?
Sure, we can do that. Thank you for that wonderful interview. It's so great to learn a bit more about you, Michael.
Would you mind if I showed a few of these books? Can you see these books?
Sure, yes, we can see them. Go right ahead.
Okay, that's Food for the Gods by Rin Berry. This is the vegetarianism of Jesus Christ. This is the forgotten beginnings of creation and Christianity. Outstanding book, very inspiring. And Lost Religion of Jesus by Keith Akers. Okay, great.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Yes, we have had Keith, we've interviewed him before on our program as well, and it's so great to have both of you. So I'd like to invite anyone who would like to join us by asking a question. You can raise hands, is how they do it on this platform. And you can also type it into the chat box. If you're with us on Facebook Live, you can also type that in directly into the news feed. And I do know that we have a question on Facebook, so I'm going to quickly go there and get that for you. After the flood seems to be the main excuse from when she's been talking to people who are questioning veganism and religion. Well, how do you respond to those sorts of questions?
There's two aspects there. One is after the flood, they're saying there was no vegetation, so they had to eat meat. This is the proclamation. Then what did the herbivorous animals who they ate live on if there was no vegetation?
Mm.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive. Number two, if you notice, and this was on the Facebook discussion yesterday, and it always comes up, Genesis 9, 3, and 4 says, just as I have given you every green plant, I now give you everything that moves for food. I've read different translations, and some of them say animals for food. But it does also say that you cannot eat the flesh with the life force therein, comma, the blood. And this is what gives the Jews the notion to drain all the blood. But that is not indicated. There's no instruction to drain all the blood. But they take it upon themselves if God is saying you can't ingest blood to drain the blood. There's only one catch-22. You cannot drain all the blood. It's impossible. So you're eating blood. So any way you look at it, it's verboten to eat animal flesh because the Bible itself says you can't ingest blood.
Wow, thank you for clarifying that.